This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, episode 12. Harry, I've been lying awake at night. You've been telling me tales about the Australians, and I realized I don't know bugger all about the Australians, and I'm so worried about this test coming up. You've been involved in Australian rugby for what, close on a decade now, you said. Tell me, who are we up against? Just start in general. What can we expect this weekend? Because I'm telling you, I think we're underestimating these guys.
Yeah, it's the curious thing in rugby. It's the rivalry that isn't, but it really should be. There's no rivalry that has this many games in it that's within 10 matches. You know, the Boks are up by 10, but it's largely a function of where they played. So they played more times in South Africa. So the record in Australia is as weak as any except the All Blacks. I think we went about 22%-ish around that for against the All Blacks. And it's like 30-something. And then the next, hottest rivalry will be England. So we really should be as up for Australia as we are for England, and we're not. And then the Wallabies do silly things like take out Nick White and Marika Korobete, the only two guys who wanted revenge on. And as you know, we feast and we eat revenge in South Africa. It's like what's our animating impulse is, but you did that thing to me 7 years ago. I want to get you. Now I'm going to blixum you. This is gone. So we have nobody. It's a bunch of nice guys. Australia is a big, happy, fair-spirited country. It's not that old. It's not that old in humanity. It was a land bridge. People went across there. Aboriginals landed up there. And then late in history, people rocked up in ships for various reasons, gold, timber, convicts. And it's still making its way, but it's a happy land. Like the anthem, it sounds like people are just going out for a walk in the park. They don't really have any sworn enemies. They don't have some like blood-dripped culture. They had their things back in the day, but it's not that kind of place. People actually generally doing well. It went from being the 25th richest country in the world to somewhere in the top 5. Longevity is off the roof. They just don't have an anger complex. And the culture in Australia is not walking around trying to murder you. It's a lot more about craft beer and man buns and innovations. They got a very thriving business community. Rugby is got a very small place in Australia, is what I've learned in writing for them. And my audience in Australia is actually driven from the Sydney area and from Brisbane, where the Boks are right now. Brisbane is, you would say, it's basically like the Highveld, except with a beach. Queenslanders are always yelling Queensland, and they love their place, and they hate Sydney. They hate New South Wales. They think New South Wales is like the Cape Town. Sydney's like, like Cape Town, latte drinking, floppy haired, quasi-liberals, almost communist. But Queensland would be like the place where a lot of Saffers could drop in besides Perth and feel kind of at home. And so it's interesting because these little centers of Sydney and Brisbane float the whole thing. It's almost as if you had rugby only in Pretoria and Cape Town, and then everyone else just got boys from those two places to play, instead of having a thriving scene in Eastern Province, a thriving Free State. So Australia is always on the verge of rugby losing the fight. So their rivalries are not with us. Australia's rivalries in rugby are with their own Australians playing rugby league, playing AFL, Aussie rules, soccer, basketball. They're a tremendous sporting country. You saw the, medals, gold medals per population. They're always the best. They really have great athletes, but so few of them know about rugby, and so they're always fighting for attention. And so we're the least of the worries. Now, it's interesting. They sold out in Suncorp in days. And Australians are trying to justify that and rationalize it. It's all about, we're winning again. And like, does it have anything to do with the world champions coming to town? I think Australians are pretty smart, the fans, and they want to see Ibn Etzebeth, Peter Steph-Toy in their prime, having just won, and they want to see Colby, dance, and they want to see the Lekkerbacks and all that. I just think it's one of those moments in time where you see Australia perk up. They finally get on the front page of the back page in the sports because they're never there. I'm telling you, the reason why Eddie Jones was hired was not for the rugby. It was just to have someone get us on the front page of the back page. They really suffer for attention.
Well, you mentioned man buns, and immediately I switched off. But there's a lot of similarities, like I said, between South Africa and Australia. There's a reason why so many South Africans moved to Australia. But I'm worried about this Brisbane crowd. Like you said, we haven't won there since 2013, for example. That's the first thing. And secondly, we won the last game we had in Australia, so that means we're supposed to be the favourites. And you know what I feel like about being the favourite? I like being the underdog. I told you that before Ireland, and we beat Ireland in the first test. And then what happened? We thought we were the favourites in the second test, and we got whipped. We're not whipped. We lost. Let's put it like that. Why do we keep losing in Brisbane? Tell me that. Why is Fortress Suncorp suddenly a fortress? I mean, really. I mean, with the Springboks, aren't we supposed to just waltz in there and take this thing, by the scruff of the neck and walk away victorious?
Yeah, it's a very fast track. It's typically a bit humid. It's a bit like Durban in terms of humidity. It's actually a function of something that doesn't exist anymore, which is in the old days, what you would do always was tire out the big Bok pack, and then there was nothing really at the end of it to hold you. The Springboks for now 5 years have been winning the second half of matches quite easily. That's where Springboks have been winning, is on the end of matches. Fitness is not a concern anymore. These guys are all professionals. Many of them play in Japan, where they come back, like Pieter-Steph du Toit, Damon Delende, Jesse Creel, are fitter now. They eat better, they sleep better, they have a more professionalized regimen. Many of them play in top French clubs or English clubs, where the standard of physiological development is different, off the charts. And to the extent that they play domestically, that is also a different style. The Bulls play up-tempo. The Stormers play up-tempo. So there's a bit of a trope here that's outdated, which is come to Suncorp and we're going to speed you off the park. I don't think you're going to speed guys like Williams, Reinach, Sacha, Colby, Grant Williams. These guys are not going to be speeded off any park. In fact, if you're going to play that game with the Boks, I think you're going to lose it. Actually, the way to trouble the Boks is more what the Irish did. It wasn't going head-to-head with mismatched speed. It was actually putting the Boks in different places than they wanted to be. And it was a battle over who would dictate that. So I don't know if the Brisbane record, which is actually kind of a long time ago, it's been a while since they played there. I think Heineke Meyer had success there. I'm not sure that it's one of those stats in rugby where there's not enough of a sample size for it to really mean something. I haven't won in Brisbane in 12 years. Like, okay, we haven't played there, or you have a different setup. So Springbok from 2018 to 2024 is a very speedy Bok. It's speedball. It's yes, it's still monster. Yes, it's still assert dominance. Sure. But you're not going to look at this pack and say that Eben is a slow lock. You're not going to look at this pack and say that Pieter-Steph cannot move around. And then on the bench, you have Ben Jason Dixon, Marku, and Kwacha. That's not really a I'm going to get tired out kind of pack. There's not even a proper lock there. So it's actually interesting. It's a chess game. I think Joe Schmidt will have not even paid one attention to the Brisbane record or the Suncorp. I'm sure he's not even thinking that. I'm sure he's thinking, oh, they got Ben Jason, Kwacha, and Marku. So what am I doing? I have to have an on-the-ball guy. It's been a chess game. The Springboks name their team so early nowadays that it's developed its own kind of pathology. It's we can talk about this forever in a different episode of why Rassie does it, but it's interesting. It's so early in the game that sometimes he's not even sure that he has the guy fit. He's on the list, but I don't know. Like most coaches wait till the last final second, right, to leave you with no options. There's something about Rassie's brain which enjoys the. Like I'm a bank robber, but I'm going to tell you which bank I'm going to rob, and then I'll rob it. I think he likes that. Catch me if you can. So it does seem to get into coaches' heads. I think no one's thinking about Suncorp Brisbane right now. They're all thinking about the matchups and what does it mean if you can use Sacha, who never plays fluff at his club, and beats me. I think Joe's going to really hate that. I think Joe Schmidt's thinking, this upstart from Munster, who used to be my inferior. I used to tell him what to do at Munster. I never really looked up at him. We should have won the World Cup final. I think we did win the World Cup final. Should have been the Lions coach. I do all the work, and then I think I get the credit. I build Ireland, and now Farrell's the best guy. I save Ian Foster's arse, and then that's Razor comes in. I get the poison chalice of the Wallabies. Let me just beat Andy Farrell next year. Let me beat Rassie and show who's boss. Joe Schmidt's quiet, but make no mistake, he is a guy that lives, breathes, and eats competition. And he's absolutely certain that he's the best coach in the world. Like 100%. If you held him down and you gave him truth serum and he had to say it, he would say, yeah, no one's smarter than me.
I'm glad you mentioned the word chess there, because you and I talked about this before as well. I see these two guys, Rassie, you mentioned, doing all these things, like I said, announcing I'm going to rob the bank, announcing who my team is going to be on Tuesday, and Joe Schmidt sitting here, and I picture this guy sitting there stewing, like you just mentioned. Ireland coach for many years, the first guy who beat the All Blacks, even if it was in America. And then Andy Farrell came along and took them to the World Cup, and he didn't really get there. And then he had to go to New Zealand, but not as the first coach, as sort of the guy behind the scenes who has to rescue Ian Foster, get the All Blacks in the final without making Ian Foster look bad, and then not getting the job of being the All Black coach. So now he's been sort of handed this consolation prize of coaching Australia. And I can just see him there, from what I've heard about his personality type, he thinks a lot about himself. He's not an arrogant person, but he believes he's one of the best, like you said, or no, if not the best. And he seems, I can picture him sitting there across this chessboard looking at Rassie and saying, you little bugger, upstart you. Now, I know, like you said, at Munster, you were my inferior, you were my junior. I'm going to show you a couple of things. I should have been the All Blacks coach. And there to me is already a disconnect now. I should have been the All Blacks coach, but I am the Australia coach. That doesn't work for me. So what do you think? How much do you think Joe will take out of beating the Boks here personally, never mind what it means to Australia? Do you honestly think there's something there for him to prove on that level?
Yeah, he takes a lot more out of a win if this happens. He has kind of an easy free swing here. It's kind of like the bonus ball. If he knocks off the world champion, stacked, 1,000 cap, 900 cap Springboks with no holes in their team. I think 9 or 10 of the starting 15 of the World Cup is in there. And even the guy who comes in, Sacha is sort of hailed as the wunderkind, the wonder boy of the world. I think Joe Schmidt comes away to that, sits down and has a beer with Jeff Parling, Laurie Lord Fisher, and Mike Cron, his coaching staff, and says, we beat a Ferrari with a Yugo. Like imagine if I had the Ferrari, that's how good I am. I can take limited things. I don't have Ibn Etzebeth. I don't have a Cheston Colby, and I've got Kellaway and Nick Frost. I beat them. So yeah, for sure. And it's it feeds into the narrative that all coaches want to build somewhere, falsely or truly, which is the up against the world, we're the underdogs, we're the David, they're the Goliath. This is classic. It's almost like been done a million times. What Joe does with that though is different. Everything Joe does is synchronized and coordinated. He actually ties into the two groups that he has to coach. Australians are actually from two groups, basically. They're Pacific Island boys like Ala Toa, Kalia, Valetini, Paisami, Ikitau, that, right? So these are people that are second generation or third generation or close communities, like a guy like Lukan Salika Loto is from Melbourne. It's just like a transplanted Pacific Island family, deeply religious, authoritarian, respect authority, will follow orders. So he's got that. He's got 10 or so of that in his team. Then he's got the private school boys. He's got the Kellaways, that play bagpipes on the side, go to sort of the really, really posh, like, toffee nose schools. And that's, so that will feed into sort of the Kellaway, the Harry Wilson, the Jake Gordon, the Nick Frost, James Slipper, these guys. And so he has to appeal to both sides of the house. It's actually what South African coaches have to do, but it's not as complicated, right? Because you have 2, whereas South African coaches have to look at 7 different tribes and creeds and backgrounds. But it's still a thing, and you have to understand it. So what Joe Schmidt does is he takes all the guesswork out. Gone is the chaos of Eddie Jones, and gone is the loud-mouthedness of Checker. Schmidt's not a Winchat. Schmidt's more of a control freak, a quiet control freak. And so he wants to take out all the contingencies. Practices are timed. Practices are not people walking on and talking to each other and having a good time. You run on at a certain time and you do a certain thing. if television shows us the warm-ups, it'll be fascinating because you'll see a highly coordinated, almost NFL-style practice where, and Joe Schmidt's a big adherent to that, by the way. He stands in the middle, almost like NFL coaches do, and then he has his assistant coaches working around him in circles, like fractals, and the components have to all work together. But it's timed. There's no like, hey, Don Human, you got some more time with the scrum? No, I need a few more minutes. No, it's like boom, boom, boom. And so what he tries to do with the young players, and let me tell you something, Joe Schmidt has picked a very young team, is he tries to say, guys, I've been here before. I've taken Ireland from the doldrums to the top. And I almost got to the top in the World Cup. Actually, I did. I beat the Springboks. Trust me, I can do this. Listen to me. So his 3-cap, 2-cap guys, 0-cap guys, like Tizano, like Kalia, like Jeremy Williams, Nongor, Drew Crummer, like guys that you've never even heard of before. He's telling them, you can beat the world champions. I guarantee you he's telling them they can. So will he take something out of that as a coach, as a teacher, which is his background? Absolutely. I call him the principal. He's got a technician, Jeff Parling. You'll know him from British and Irish Lions days. He's the line-out guy. He's got Mike Cron, the All Black scrum guy, and he's got Laurie Fisher, the inspiration guy with the bucket hat, the OG bucket hat. That crew is a very salty crew. That's actually not a bad coaching crew. They're going to look across the field and say, okay, you've got the rugby hipster, Tony Brown. You've got the middleweight boxer, Jerry Flannery. You got the rugby rogue, Rassie, and you've got the harbor pilot. Come on. The matchup between the coaches is as interesting as the matchup of the players on the field, because the players on the field is a mismatch. It's like, Mike Tyson versus the guy next door. So we should win, but rugby's a funny old game where you can actually take away and negate people's strengths, where you can win all the stats on the field and look up at the scoreboard and say, ooh, but it's 13-12. How is that possible? How's it possible? Fetcher, slow ball, counter ruck, squeeze plays, defensive shapes that don't make sense to Sacha, who's never seen defensive shapes at a test level before. Everything he looks at is wrong. It doesn't make sense. There's no space. There's no time. Kurbas starts running him into blind alleys, and Willis decides, I'm gonna save the day by myself. Put it on my shoulders. Let me just go full Willie, and we know how that ends sometimes. So I think there's I don't know, if you're betting the house, you're betting the box. If you're betting 100 and you just want to have some fun, why not bet on Joe? Joe's shown an ability to trouble the box as well.
I want to just talk to you about the coaches briefly. We've all seen Don Heeman, now you said the scrum coach, the harbour pilot, the harbour master. And then you talked about the OG bucket hat guy, Laurie.
Lord, yeah.
Why do you say Lord? This is a matter of interest.
That's his nickname, Lord Laurie. He is a revered figure. I mean, so I've met all these guys, and I'm going to tell you, Laurie is a wonderful fella. He is pure rugby. He's a guy that players will play for. He's got really good ruck entry arrangements. The reason why Joe got him was that Joe Schmidt's game plan depends on 150 rucks. I mean, building so many rucks, 120 rucks. Never the Bok thing where sometimes Boks will build like 65 rucks, 75 rucks. That's not Laurie. Laurie Fisher comes to you and says, I'm going to be able to build a lot of rucks. That will be the game in a microcosm. Can the Wallabies actually do that against the cleaners and against the ruck mongrels? I don't think so. It would be nice to have Mostert in there because he's sort of the ultimate ruck monkey. But still, I think there's a plenty of brutality. And so some of these guys are going to have a hard time. It's the toughest game in the career of Tizano, the open sider for Wallabies. He's never been at this level before. It'll be by far the toughest game for Isaac Kalia, who's facing Frans Malherbe, who's been getting some shit. And so you would think Buffalo want to, put the hammer down and say, hey, guys, I'm still here. I'm tired of talking of hearing only of Ox. And then I think there's other guys that are going to have a baptism of fire. Probably you would think in the back line, there's some guys that are going to be found out because there's no one going stronger and better than Jesse Creel and Diolende.
I wanted to, before we talk about the players, because I specifically want to talk to you about the players and the fact that we're now playing UFC. So these players mean absolutely nothing to us. The names, we just look at it blankly. Mike Cron, I read somewhere that he's now I see scrum coach, but also I suppose more the forwards coach, because I saw you went to watch some ballet shows, whatever you call it, and to see how they lift the dancers, for example, to implement that in the lineup. It's kind of innovative thinking, like you would think someone like Rassie would like to do.
No, he's good. He's also an argumentarian. Mike Cron is the best arguer you ever heard. So inside the coaching box, you have to win some arguments. Like, just imagine Rassie, Tony, Jerry, and Don. I mean, like, people have to argue, and sometimes you're a good coach, but if you don't win an argument with the head coach, they're not going to be able to do what you want to do. So I think those guys all respect each other. I think Mike Cron would know how to tell Joe that we want to do restarts differently, which is where lifts come into play, or in line-out ball. I mean, line-out's another topic that we can get into, but it's going to be fascinating to see the new line-out rules and the attempt at a contest and so forth. But no, I think there's plenty in the coaching box. They know how to take a message across. They know how to, instill abstract principles into a team. I think they understand. I think for sure Joe Schmidt understands Pacific Island mentality and how to get those guys, playing for a team. And then I think Lord Laurie Fisher is really well versed in the schools, the posh schools around Sydney, and the hard man, farm boy schools, upper North New South Wales and in Queensland. And then you got this Brumby culture, which plays really block ball, not just from Jake White times, but forever. So they can put together something that on the day troubles the Boks or slows them down, just like Wales did for a while, right? So if Wales can figure out a way to stay in a game till 55 minutes, kind of Joe Schmidt team with actually bigger athletes and quicker, could they do it? Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think, the game is not going to be won in the first 30 minutes. It's a proper test match, but I just don't think that we can really credibly claim the underdog status, but I'm doing it every day. My mission is to say with underdogs. But when I look at the team sheet, I go, no, come on, guys. This is one you got to put away. This is one where you have to say number 1 versus number 9 means something.
Well, now let's talk about the players. The first player I want to talk to you about is Sacha, clearly, because he's the standout selection, I think, from what I understand from both sides. Maybe I'm wrong because I don't know the Australians, but from South Africa's point of view, that is the clear, sort of surprise, if I want to call it that. And you were talking about Joe Schmidt having a free swing almost. If he loses this game, it's okay because it's the world champion. But if he wins it, he beat the Springboks, the world champions, with sort of a fresh team, a new guy that's not really on the same level. Rassie, to a large degree, is doing the same thing here. You said it yourself. If he wins it here, it's because of Sacha, and if he loses it, it's also because of Sacha. Yeah, I gave the guy a chance. Sort of a get out of jail free card, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that is the headline. I think you're right. So I think the selection of Sacha and then to a lesser extent Lowe at 8 are the two headlines from the Boks selection side. And from the Wallaby side, because they're in rebuild, we would say nothing is really a headline. It's all kind of like, yeah, well, who else would you use except for some new guys? Because it's all new guys. There's only 2 guys with 50-plus caps in the Wallaby side, whereas if you look at the Boks side, there's no headline in picking, Ox Bongi, Buffel, the Mutant, the Viking, the Missile, the Bear, the Sheriff. And it's like, okay, that's a proper buck pack. When you get into the back line, what are you going to do if you pick Sacha? You got to pick experience. So you've got your 33 cap Kubas Reinach, who probably could have 50. And he's played, really top level rugby. I think the setup favors Sacha. Suncorp is a speed track. We see he has range. So I think he'll probably get some kicking off early and get comfortable about that. You would think that the Boks will win some scrum penalties. They'll probably win some penalties at the Rock. The Wallabies leak penalties like no one else. So early doors for Sacha will be making his kicks at goal, right? So just you're going to get a lineup. The whole Republic is going to be a little bit breathless waiting to see what it looks like. He bangs one over. Then we're all going to go, oh, okay, good. It's sort of that Bok mentality of you made your first kick, so now we can go do something else. Now we can go score tries. If he misses it and we have this sort of flashback, we're all going to be like, oh, no, it's bad. That's why, Mr. Reliable, the kamikaze kid, Pollard, is on the bench. Because at any point in time, if kicks are missed and you just want to slot Sacha back into a different position, maybe back to fullback, or even slot over to 12 where he plays a lot for the Stormers, then you're fine. So I don't think it's complete madness, But it is really a good test. In a way, it's Rassie telling Joe, I don't really respect your team. Like, I'm kind of telling you, Joe, you're my practice squad, baby. Because I'm not going to name Sacha against the All Blacks for a quarterfinal or a semifinal. Not now, not with 4 tests. I don't think so. And the first one at 10, there's no way. So I think it's saying the Wallabies, I like it that you are a tomato can opponent on my rise to heavyweight championship. I've got to have a couple of opponents that I have an easy win over, and here it is. That's what he will think. He's not going to say it. If he says that, then it puts too much pressure on Sacha, and it puts too much pressure on himself. I think you're right. He uses him as a plausible deniability alibi and says, well, the only way you can get someone to play is you got to throw them in the mix, look what happened. But around him, so just like to his right is Damon Delande, a fly-off's best friend. All you got to do is tip it onto the guy, and he's going to get yards for you. On the other side, you've got Willie and Colby, probably instructions on the weak side. You look a little further across the field, and you got Jesse Creel. If you want to kick to someone, KLA is a great chaser. In the pack, you have Lowe being buttressed by all this, people that have played together for 50, 60, 70 tests. I think it is the right way to use Sacha. I think it had it been wrong almost to say, let me throw Sacha in against a team where there's 7 newbies or there's 6 debutants and run the show. I think this is the way to do it. It replicates proper test pressure. You're on the road, and sometimes being on the road is less pressure because it's just, hey, I'm here in Brisbane, never been here before. I think it's cool. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to other matchups. When you go across the bench, you see some really interesting things when you have a 6-2 bench against a 5-3 bench. You always have a matchup that doesn't make sense to you. You're like, has Kwagga going to insert himself more, or is it Dylan Peach, the utility back for the Wallabies, like extra back versus extra forward? And that gets into what kind of game they'll play. The trap here is if you say, Sacha, go crazy, do artistry, paint like you're an abstract painter. It doesn't really work if you're playing with this Bok team. I think incremental changes are what Tony should do. You saw the little add-ons on counterattack, for example. That works. The add-ons off of kick chase, first phase ball. I don't know if we're really like that expert at phase 6, phase 7, phase 8 innovations. I haven't seen it work. I think every phase you go beyond 5 for Boks, it starts to get more and more stale unless Willie can just come up with something. So the issue here is going to be, to what extent does Sacha and Willie play together as a tandem attack? You saw it a few times with Willemse and Willie sometimes on the field. That's interesting. So we'll see if that can mesh.
The one thing about Springboks now, or South Africans now playing in the URC, is we know more about Glasgow and Leinster than we know about Australia. A couple of years ago, everybody knew who George Gregan was and Stephen Larkham and David Pocock. Now, if I look at this Australian team sheet, I have no idea who they are. The only player I honestly recognize is Alan Alatua. I don't remember how to pronounce that. And the only reason I remember is because Eben was, dragging him around by the collar a couple of years ago. And I remember Eben's angry eyes. And that was Alan Alatua on the other side of it. And that's about the extent of my knowledge of this Australian team. So I think it's a good idea with your knowledge and your understanding of this team. Tell us about this team, starting somewhere with Alan. He's now the captain as well. Tell us about this team and what can we expect from each one of these, and which one of these players should we hate when they run into the field. You have an instantaneous dislike when we see them.
Yeah, so they just call them 7 A's, by the way. Alan Alato. There's so many A's and so many apostrophes that they just go 7 A's, because there's literally 7 A's in his name. That'll help you. He's the only guy over 30 in the starting pack, so everyone else is just a lad. He is the only grown man. He's got 69 caps, and literally that is by far the most of the starting team. So he is the captain. He's not really an inspiring captain. Now, he does have swag because he was the one that was enveloped by Eben. He was the one with the crazy eye. He was the recipient of the crazy eyes, and they had a beer afterwards. That's not covered as much. Is literally 30 minutes later, they were having a beer together and having a chuckle. So these are just like, Alan is a really good player. His brother plays in Ireland, actually. He's a props prop. He's just a prop, like he got a little bit of burst. He's a bit like Beast in the sense that, he's got some athletic ability, but he's a prop's prop. Matty Fessler is the hooker, and that's a weak point. None of the two, Josh Nasser and Matt Fessler, are unknown hookers. Like no one would know them in South Africa. And the thing is, they're not really that well known in Australia. So Fessler is like a craft beer guy. He's a guy you would see at the tap, with some cleverly named pun of a beer. He's got the fashionable hipster mustache. And so he's kind of innocuous. Now he's going to face a big test. This is Matty Fessler's time to throw over Achia Snyman in a line out, because under the new rules, why wouldn't you always contest always? Because the minute you don't, you open up a throw to the 9 directly. And so you're going to have someone up probably in the front of the line out. Either Eben or Achia is going to be put up as a tower, and then Lowe's got the back covered over Harry Wilson. So Fessler is on the hot seat. Isaac Kalia is the other prop. He's going to come up against the Buffel. He's a shy warrior. He's got like a little curly perm top. He's got interesting patronage. I think a Peruvian parent and someone from the Pacific Island. He's a very quiet guy. He's only 24, coming up against Malherbe. So that's stout. I would think that if you hear Kalia's name, Isaac Kalia, if you hear his name a lot, it's not a good idea. It's not good for the Wallabies. That means someone's getting pinged at scrum. Lukan Saleokola Loto, or LSL as he's called, just call him the DJ. He's a super nice guy. I've had good chats with him. He is an actual DJ. He's from Melbourne, which is the unfashionable. It's like being from Durban, like born and bred in rugby. It's not your popular origin. Usually if you're from Sydney, from East, from South Suburb, or you're from Brisbane and Queensland and farmland. So he's the guy from Melbourne. He actually is a Red now. So he's going back to the Reds because the Rebels are defunct. He's got a good amount of caps. I think 30, 32 caps-ish. He's played in England. He's played well. He's usually a captain or vice captain. He's probably the best lock that you've got going if you don't pick the Arnold brothers or Will Skelton or Isaac Rodda or some guys that you would actually know. LSL is a good player. Nick Frost is the very tall guy. He's as tall as as tall as Becker. He's like 6'9" in the old measurements. He's about 205. He's kind of an awkward guy. He's 24 years old, hasn't grown into his body. So LSL is a proper dynamo. Frost is probably someone that you would think that Achie or Ibn could bully a little bit. He's very quick in open field, which is not going to happen. He actually is quick. Rob Valentini, or Bobby V, as he's known, has this big, beautiful mop of hair that he uses as a scrum cap without having to have a scrum cap. No hat could fit over it. It is unbelievable, actually. It comes out almost in like a tree. It sprouts out. It's like a family tree on his head. He is by far the best forward in Australia. He is consistent. He's really good. He's got 45 plus caps at age 25. He gets over the gain line. He is their Pieter-Steph du Toit. If you're looking for a matchup that's decent, like for real, it'd be Pieter-Steph against Bobby V. They both don't have any quit. They both love to tackle. Bobby is probably the better carrier. Pieter-Steph's the better tackler. And they'll probably have a proper ding-dong battle at the ruck. Then it gets really interesting. We're talking about Tizano. Carlo Tizano is from out in west. So you have all the population in Australia is where the rain falls, right? So you have Sydney, you have Melbourne, and you have Brisbane, the three big cities. And then you have Canberra, which is the cold capital city where they have players that go, but not many of them started there. So look at under 20 Australian. It's guys from Sydney and from Brisbane, mostly from those schools. And now you go all the way over to Western Australia, which is time zones and thousands of kilometers away. The flight from Melbourne to Sydney to Perth is a proper flight. It's like you're going overseas. So that's where Carlo Tizano is from. So not only are you cut off and playing for the Western Force in Perth, which is often called Durban East. There's so many Safas there. Tizano doesn't really have access to the proper schools. There is no elite rugby schools in Perth. So here you have his debut, first cap, this wood chopping, Josh Kronfeld, kind of all blacky kind of guy. He's a hard nut. He likes to get into, he's going to get carded or he'll be the man of the match. And so look for Carlo Tizzano. Probably the Wallabies' hopes rest on Tizzano and his backup, Luke Reimer. We'll cover him in a second. Harry Wilson is this big, affable, super nice guy who's Queenslander, and he plays cricket. He's like an all-rounder. He's a proper 8. He's a big bear. He's been accused in Australia of not having the grunt, but Joe Schmidt likes a CJ Stander guy who just carries for you 10, 12, 15 times a game. So that's the pack. That pack on paper should not be able to handle the World Cup winning Bok pack. So there you go.
Tizzano's making his debut, isn't it?
Yeah. Tizzano is a run-on, first cap, 0 experience in the Wallaby camp. And the reason why he's doing that is Fraser McWright, who is the heir apparent to George Smith, David Pocock, the on-the-ball, Michael Hooper type. The Wallabies have always done well when they had a good open sider. That was Fraser McWright. So it was supposed to be Bobby V, Fraser McWright, and Harry Wilson, a settled loose trio. That is the loose trio. That's the first choice, best choice. And that's where it was going to go. Then Fraser McWright was injured, and so they had to make a big decision. They pulled Tizzano in out of nowhere. So he's walking straight in from Nowheresville, from Western Australia, way out there in Perth, where it's just like it's like a dystopian. It's like those apocalyptic movies. And he's working in, and he's going, I'm about to get clean by Peter Steph Toy, Archies Neyman, Ibn Etzebeth, Sia Kulisi. I hope I'm okay. He's a crazy guy, Tizzano. So he's approaching it in the right way, which is, I'm going in hard. I'll give my leg. I'll give my soul. What I'm telling you guys is he's going to be the man of the match, or he's going to be carded, red carded. He'll be the red card. So he doesn't know how to play this game. So either he's going to be so stupid that he's great, or he's going to be second guessing himself on every third ruck, fourth ruck, not realizing what it feels like for Malcolm Marx to come get you. So I think this is a proper test. I think it's okay. It's a bit like Sacha. So Tizzano is physically up to it. He's not like Tom Hooper at Loftus a year or 2 years ago, where you throw a guy in and he's not ready physically, and so then he's mentally scarred. This is a guy who's physically able. I mean, he's a big strapping lad. He's a good, muscular, Marco van Staden type build. So you think he's going to be okay on that. It's just the mentals. Have you ever really been cleaned that hard? I mean, Archia put someone out of the World Cup. Was it Bertie Retallick? That's the game. If your shoulder's hanging out the wrong side, I'm taking it. That's the pack. That's where we are. Look, like I said, it's a bunch of craft beermen, cricketers, DJs, and a props prop.
Now, we talked about Sacha. I don't want to use the term wrapped in cotton wool, but to a degree it was, being thrown into the deep end, but, having all these lifeguards around him. The experienced heads, Kobus Reinach, Damien Delende, Willie, Kobe, Jesse Creel. So who are they protecting him against in terms of what's waiting for him on the other side, in terms of their back line? I mean, who's their flyer, for example? I don't know that guy either from Mabara. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so on the Australian side, the back line, which typically is a good back line, their back line is usually better than their packs. It's the same thing this time around. There's some real studs and stars, but I would say at 10, they don't have what you would normally expect. There's no Quay Cooper, there's no trickster. There's not even someone who's sort of the do everything right, like who I called Lieutenant Bernard Foley. What he was like a English subaltern in the Boer War or something. Noah Lolosio, zero confidence on his face, shy kid. He's got 20 plus caps. He's 24-ish years old. He had the post at 10 and then he lost it. Eddie Jones, famously or infamously in Australia, just axed him, the actually incumbent 10, and threw in Ben Donaldson and Carter Gordon, who have, since just completely shit the bed. So Noah's kind of the comeback kid. He's a guy so he's a Brumbies fly-off. So he's a winner. He knows how to win a game, and he plays Kiwis. He's just never projected that real swag, that larrikin, which what Australians call like a guy who can go into the bush and the outback and survive. He doesn't have that kind of feel to him. He doesn't seem like a Crocodile Dundee. He looks more like the guy that Crocodile Dundee would hire to carry the boat. Jake Gordon, though, is his partner in crime. He's a 31-year-old, looks like a roadie in a rock band. Like, looks like a guy who's like, stayed up all night, smoked a pack, and then gets on the field. Tough guy, like him a lot, 22 caps. He played for the Waratahs and was the captain. And I think this is really important. When a team is really bad, like the Waratahs were, and they lose everything, but you have a player on the team that's good, that's like Ibn in 2017 under Alistair Coetzee, you learn a lot about a guy. Never hung his head, tough, scrabbler, could have been captain. So I think what Joe's done is he's paired his, most stable, like the golf caddy with the golfer, the young golfer, the good guy, the guy who smokes the whole round, tells you what to do, which club to hit. That's Jake Gordon. Behind him or around him, he's got some really good players. Hunter Paisami and Len Ikitau are a proper midfield. They're smaller than Creel and Dialende, and that's their problem. But they're quick-footed. They do score. They're actually pretty good defensive players. Paisami will blitz you, but he's just too small. Ikitau is more of the dancer type. On the wings, they dropped Korobeti. Apparently, he arrived from Japan not in as great shape as he should have been. The Japanese season finished a while back, so that was the problem there. So they're using Filippo Daugunu. Daugunu is like a Mapimpi type, like really good athlete. Played some league, played some union. Not that young. I think he's almost touching 30, but he's got maybe 10 tests in him. He doesn't really understand the game of rugby that well. So if I were Pollard coming on at the end, or if I was Dialende, I'd pepper him with some kicks, put it behind him, roll the ball, do some diagonals, get him into a tackle or ruck situation, and he's a card magnet. On the other side, you got the opposite. Andrew Kellaway, the bagpiper, the bachelor, the guy who went to the Scottish high school in the Sydney area, as posh as can be, doesn't put a foot wrong. Imagine Ben Smith, not the journalist muckraker, but the actual All Black, the guy that doesn't look like much, Conrad Smith, Ben Smith, those kind of players, but really is always in the right place, right time. So that's Kellaway. Kellaway's up against Colby. Can you imagine that? That's nightmare time, right? I know he's stepping off the right foot. I know he's stepping on the right foot. Oh, he did it to me. Like Colby is impossible to guard. Kellaway is sort of up against that, and he'll use the touch line as his friend. He'll use space. He'll probably try to get to Colby early. That's a matchup worth watching. And then finally at the back, if you want a villain on the field, if you want a guy to hate, the cocky dude called Tom Wright. He's got that kind of attitude. He'll run into some fights. He'll run into some pushing shove, and he'll just, give Ibn the push in the back. Tom Wright is a controversial figure in Australia. Half of the country thinks he's going to lose this match by himself. The other half says, no, but he can win it in a moment of magic. It's almost like watching Vili when Vili was at his least popular. Like whatever that era was when people said, you got to drop Philly, he's terrible. Maybe it was 2019. So that's where Tom Wright is. A lot of people wanted him to be dropped in favor of a proper fullback, but he's a counter-attacking, watch me, loves the ball, doesn't really love the ball, doesn't love the game when he doesn't have the ball. That's the 15. Backline is a mismatch, probably more of a mismatch than the pack, just because when you look at the box side, every single name besides Sacha is a known, proven entity with plenty of skins on the wall.
If you were Joe Schmidt now, let's talk about the game plan. If I was Joe Schmidt, and I'm not nearly as much of a rugby expert as you are, I would say the young guys, you call him the sheriff, Elrich Lowe, I don't know why you call him the sheriff, that's an interesting nickname. And then Sacha being the debutants, Sacha especially, Elrich has a bit more experience. First time he started, but at least he's played a bit more. Those to me would be potential weak points to sort of exploit almost. Or, am I right? Or how would you approach that kind of a thing, that kind of obvious glaring sort of, something to look at as a Joe Schmidt?
No, I think you're right. So when you take a young guy's coming in against you, you analyze what his thing is that got him in the team. So what is Elrich Lowe's strength? So then I'd make him do another thing. So, to take an example, it would be, if I think that Archie is all about the offload and he's all about the run across the gain line, but doesn't really love to get involved in a messy, sloppy ruck. Then I put him in as many rucks as possible. I take away, not even like try to defeat him as superpower. I just don't let him do the power that he has. So I would say against Low, he's a mobile guy. He's busy. So what I would try to do is move the game away from him. It's almost like if you don't get enough touches, if you don't get enough action early in a game, you never play yourself in, which is possible for a loose forward. So take the game away from him. And maybe you take it right at Sia. You just say, I'll try to make Sia your top tackler. And then Low doesn't know where to get involved. He's not really a out and out over the ball, like foot over the ball, counter ruck pilferer. He's good at that, but that's not really his thing. So then if you come back to oranges and you're in the locker room at halftime and you're doing whatever you're doing when you're doing adjustments, someone might go, yeah, we got to get the bomb squad on because Elric's not busy enough. So that's the danger. Just make him where he's not involved. I don't think Low's not a hothead. He's not a guy that you can tip. So on the other side, I'd make Tizano lose his shit. I would have Archie talking to him, telling him blessings, talking about his girlfriend, whatever, explaining relative humidity. Yeah. Explaining relative humidity. So I don't know where you go with that, but you make the guy go crazy. You don't say anything bad, non-PC. And so that's where I'd go. I think on the other side, Sacha, I just make him see things he's never seen before. We talked a lot about how NFL blitzing has come in vogue, and we call it rush D, but it's just, it's people coming out of the line. It was always like, I got to touch your hand, my hand in defensive line. If we can always touch hands and we're 15 guys across, it's really difficult to break the line if I got maybe a sweeper at the back. But now it's more about salience. It's almost like battle of the bulge. I'm going to actually pierce your attack line and get behind you and then see what happens. So if the Wallabies can shoot someone, Paisami or maybe Tate McDermott, the reserve number 9, he's a bit like a Faf guy. If I get behind you, and now when you're doing the pass at the back or you're coming around the fold and you see Wallet, you see gold, it's going to be difficult for a young guy. Pollard would know what to do in that situation. It wouldn't be sexy. He might even get booed by his own fans, but he would know what to do, which is eat the ball, set the ruck. Pollard would just run over you. And so he would just tuck it and run. I think Sacha is so used to finding space and time that's what I would do if I was Joe. So on Low, I make you a non-player, and then on Sacha, I make you play too much. If they get back to halftime and oranges and Joe's looking at everything, you might say, good guys, you made, the young lad try to win the game by himself, and then you took the sheriff out. The sheriff you took his badge away.
Right, now that's specific players, and from a South African point of view, and also from an Australian point of view, overall game plan. If I had to go play the number 1 team in the world now, defending world champions, coming off a draw against Ireland, still showing to be quite a formidable team, and I have this young squad behind me, and I have something to prove as a coach, what would you say? How would you have tackled these Springboks and to try and eke out a win somehow?
Yeah, shape of the game. So I would say if I'm Joe Schmidt, I cannot lose the territory battle by much. Can I win it? Yeah, maybe not. But if it's 50-50 territory, I'm feeling okay. There's so many other wrinkles to it. But that's my first, my non-negotiable is if we're down 60, if we're 40% of the time in our own territory and we're leaking the expected amount of penalties that we do at Ruck, which is what Wallabies have done, and there's no way to fix that overnight. I don't like it because Sacha and Andre are going to bang over 12 to 21 points just from, freebies. If I'm Joe Schmidt, what I want besides territory is parity at set piece in such a way that, okay, maybe you nick a couple of lineouts, but not 3 or 4. If I lose 4 to 5 lineouts, I'm toast. If I lose 4 to 5 scrums, I'm carded and I'm toast. And then it's a long, long day at the battle. So if you look at the first 40 minutes, it's like, we don't die in the scrums. Our lineout functions. We nick a couple from you. And we play in the middle of the field and we're not camped at our own red zone. I think Schmidt checks that off, check box, tick the box. I didn't die. Can I win the second half? I don't think Joe thinks that he can, unless it's, a 3-point game, 4-point game. So if you're down by 10, it's pretty much gone, because you look at the bench. Vincent Koch up against aging James Slipper. Malcolm Marx against a guy you never heard of before. Marco van Staden against rookie first guy. Luke Reimer is a first cap as well. Kwacha sort of running unopposed in the way I think you and I like him to be, which is that late game addition. And then you have, who is it? Andre Pollard with an incredibly quick 9 under the new laws where not allowed to touch the 9. I mean, I think the big story here on the rules experimentation is Grant Williams behind a pack that's getting ascendancy and a tired Wallaby pack. You saw what happened in the World Cup or any game where Grant's got any kind of space. He can just run around you. So I think Joe's going to be, how can we tie up the ruck in such a way legally where we don't have Kobus or Grant just going to town around the ruck, because Jake Gordon and Tate McDermott really are not quick enough to contain them. And you would not want Harry Wilson, the big bear, number 8, to try and contain that either. So that's just too much. Joe Schmidt will also think probably, and this is going to go against all Australian sentiment, but they're probably going to need to kick a lot more than they normally do. You're going to want to kick on our Lekker backs because there's a little bit of a height problem there. Dagunu is a real aerial. And you probably want to kick as well because you want to make Sacha, being screamed at from the left side by Willie, kick it back to you. First test at fly-off, you get a ball. Sometimes our 10 floats back, with the 8 to collect that second kick or the box kick. We all want Sacha to attack, right? But what if that first time he does, he gets swallowed and turned over by Tizano and it's a penalty? The next time he catches the ball and Willie's like, kick, or, he's saying green or red or diagonal, he's probably going to kick. So I think if you're Joe, that's a win if you make Sacha kick back to you and don't launch a Tony Brown counter. Finally, I would say that Wallabies have to be a lot more accurate. There's the part where you focus on your opponent and there's the part where you focus on yourself. The Wallabies will say to themselves, if we just stay accurate, there is a tendency by the Springboks to waste possession in the red zone. You've seen it, I've seen it, where you have the ball in the red zone and you keep attacking and you run out of ideas and then you say, hey, Willie, what's your idea? And that's it. That's the whole plan. That's why I'm kind of interested about Sacha. Like, Sacha looks like, in the best possible way, an arrogant, confident athlete. I like that, by the way. Watch the Olympics. Who's winning? It's the guys who believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. So I would think that Sacha could develop a love-hate, prickly, artistic tension, creative thing with Philly, and that would be fun. I want them yelling at each other about, who can outdo each other with the try assist. That would be a magic day, because then you're looking at 40 points. So I always look at score totals, like in the NBA, you say, do I want to win an 85 to 84 game? And is it easier for me to win an 84 to 85 game than 110 to 108? And the casual fan goes, how do you create that? Isn't it just organic? The score goes the way it is. No. You can make early shot clock. So just like in rugby, you can launch attacks quicker. You can say to yourself, I'm not going to let anything in, but I don't mind a lot of wildness because like the Bulls at Loftus. I know you're scoring some tries. I'm scoring some tries, but can you keep scoring? And, that's what happened to the French in the quarterfinal when they couldn't. They didn't even have a sniff in the final 25 minutes. They were dead on their feet. So there is a possibility that Rassie says with this team, with the speed on the field, he just goes, what about if we make this like a big wild score, like a 38, 32, 36, 30, what kind of game is that? And we'll end up on the top. I suspect that's what's going to happen, actually. I suspect a high-scoring game, and Joe's going to be upset because he's going to be telling his team to not let that happen. He wants to have a grinded out, uncomfortable, a lot of knock-ons, a lot of, stop-starts. I don't think he wants to go to 80 minutes with this athletic team of the Boks because his bench just cannot handle it.
You mentioned that this is a very fast team, and you mentioned also that Suncorp has got this fast surface and everything else, and it's not supposed to be a fortress and everything. Being Rassie, like you said, Kwach on the bench, it's a quick bench as well. What are we looking at for the Springboks? Are we going to be running them off their feet? Are we going to be playing Tony ball, if you want to call it that? Or are we going to kick a bit more? What are we expecting from the Springboks? Number one, how to take on this Australia, and number two, what do they want to take out of this game afterwards? What would they want to have learned from it?
The focus on bomb squad is always about the people in the bomb squad. The bomb squad is all about the people who aren't in the bomb squad. The bomb squad is all about telling Eben, my man, just exhaust yourself for 50 minutes. See ya. Like, literally, I want you, when you're coming off, that you can hardly walk. It's the safety and security that you can tell your big power athletes on the soften them up phase that you can go. So I actually think, yes, I think the pace will be extremely high. Not efficacy against Ireland, but look at the two Ireland tests and look at the pace of attack and counter and decision-making. It was off the charts. It's nothing the Wallabies have seen against Wales and Georgia, like light years. So I would think they're going to say, shock and awe, let's take you into deep water you've never been. Let's get into a threshing shark fight where everyone's ripping flesh off each other and see what happens. We are okay. Ox, Bongi, France, Eben, Archia, Peter Steff, we've seen it all, done it all. We've got our captain extraordinaire. He's going to tell us what to do, calm us down, and his lieutenants are going to say the same thing. In the back line, we got one guy, and one guy that has to fit into a system. That's it. So it's, players play for players. I would think that they're telling the guys, we want Sacha to succeed. It's not on him so much if he fails, it's on you, because you didn't do your job. This Bok team is all about doing your job, this job, that job. If you do your job, Sacha's going to have space and time. And then the theory is, do you want Sacha on an island one-on-one against Noah? Oh, yes, I do. That's what I want. I want that. I think he's going to waltz by him. What I don't want is Sacha on his bum getting smashed by Bobby Valentini. So I think it's going to be a matter of that. But I think how it's actually going to play out is the Boks are used to playing both from the ERC, from Japan, from English Premiership nowadays, from Irish competition, and then from this Irish series. They're used to a far different pace. And so Suncorp is actually a bit of a trap for the Wallabies. Don't say this to the Wallabies because we're the underdogs, but it's a bit of a trap because I think they'd have been better off playing us in a bog down up in Canberra, somewhere cold and muddy. I think you put Sacha, Grant, Kubas, Creel on this hard ground, quick ground with a delightful temperature that feels like Highveld winter. I don't know. Could be a big score.
Especially in the afternoon as well. The fact that it's in the afternoon seems to be a part of the reason why it's a sellout now. People can actually bring the kids to the game and things like that, and it suits the Boks as well.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think the other thing is, I think this team is different. So I kind of think the Boks are a better traveling team. We had this knock that we're terrible tourists, and that part has to do with cultural things. Like a lot of the players were not worldly. They were not wise to the world. So you had some wide-eyed people sometimes leaving for the first time, Kraaifontein, getting on a plane and going to Galway, Ireland, or some, bumfuck place. And you go, where am I? This is a team. These guys are really savvy. Like they're everywhere. Where's the Bok team from? Everywhere. What languages do they speak? Several. Is Willie LaRue a guy who can make you a sushi dinner in a typical omakase fashion? Absolutely, he can. And he'll even have the Japanese robe to prove it. So these are not like, just guys from the farm or guys from the township or guys who just now woke up. Every one of them now has played different places. I don't think they're overawed by it. I think the Brisbane bogey is about to be broken, and I think it's about to be smashed. I think you sometimes look at matches and you go, where's the catch? And you want the underdog status. So you argue like counterintuitively for it. This isn't one of those. You look at it 7 different ways and you say, if Boks do what they're supposed to do, they should roll over the number 9 team in the world. They should roll because the pack is too hard. They should roll because the pack is too good. And they should roll because the speed is just measurably, empirically better all across the park. There's only one guy I can think of making a mismatch in this whole setup. And I guess it's probably Dagunu in the air against Kurtley Arnse. I mean, Kurtley Arnse's got good hops, but still, at some point, a guy's tall or a guy's not.
Just quickly, one of the things you mentioned now is the rule changes. And especially on the line-out and the scrums, the fact that you have to set the thing within 30 seconds now. And I see several people now saying that the opposing team will now delay it on purpose, concede a free kick. Because, for example, you had a penalty kick, you kicked it out, it's a line out, they delay the line out. Now you get a free kick, your penalty kick becomes a free kick now. And you have to kick it, you can't scrum again, or you can't scrum, or call the line out again, from what I understand. Do you think maybe teams like Australia, savvy teams, will sort of exploit that, especially like in the scrums?
I mean, somebody will. It's very naive to say that nobody will find a loophole in the law. That's literally what we're wanting our open siders to do. It's what our coaches feast off of. Everyone's going to do it in a certain situation. I mean, right now, you would say the Springboks have the best scrum on the top tier. But what if there comes a day when we don't? So would we do the same? Would we try to get out of something where we're leaking penalties to England, right? And of course you would. I mean, why wouldn't you? You would do what you can do to win the game. In the NBA, people take fouls. It's a foul. They take a foul on purpose. They even tell the ref, I'm going to foul. Why do they do that? Because stop the clock. And you use your fouls. Rugby is getting to the point now where it's not this honorable school game with a blazer and you got colors and the special tips on your blazer. It's a game to win. It's millions of bucks. It's future. It's got incredible ramifications. So everyone will get an edge. Who's the best player in history? Just if you throw out a name, you'll come to Richie McCaw pretty quickly. Was Richie McCaw all about? I want to do everything the proper way. I just make sure everything I do is proper and everything is great. No, we love him because he was that scoundrel. He was the bank robber. So I think if someone's got a weak scrum and they're about to get pounded and carded, and then, Frans Malherbe can work you into penalties into the 22 at will, and at some point, Kalia gets carded, I'm taking the free kick. I'm telling my guys, set up normal, act normal, but just take a knee before it's really bound or somebody loses a contact. I don't know, something happens.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether they thought this out properly, thought through the ramifications. But like you said, it's there. It's now have to be exploited. I wanted to ask a last question about the referee, Luke Pierce. Your thoughts on him?
So I never use referees' names unless I absolutely have to. But I would say this referee is well-versed. He's fit. And I actually think a lot of times now in the current game with the way it stretches and how many rucks are built, you really have to be in position. It's not so much sometimes that a referee makes a wrong decision or right decision. It's like Jacob Piper says, there's 300 or so decisions and there's like another 600 that are non-decisions, like what not to blow. So yeah, the referee's going to have, I think the referee's got the right tools, experience, fitness. I almost think in my life, I've learned that referee obsession is destructive to winning and losing in your team. And it's almost more like understanding the referee, almost like understanding the environment. Like if you were trying to, dig a mine and pull out ore and whatever, you do every kind of study around it, the soil. I guess the referee's like the soil of the game. Like, okay, so what's going to collapse on us this time? I really have faith in this vintage of the box on that, by the way. Not so much from the coaching box where we've had some wrinkles, let's say. The players, Sio Kolisi is really good at talking to a ref. Ibn Etzebeth, for all his crazy eyes, really good at chatting. I think the refs trust Malherbe. I think they trust Ox. I really feel like, I don't think it's a rub of the green. I just think that they are really good at empathy. They understand what a referee's life is, and Frans in particular is really good at just that little tiny, understated, that kind of almost shy Afrikaner farmer guy from Brasdorp. Like, just am I a good ref? Do you need something else? I love it. I think it's going to be a proper test, and I just don't go into these tests worrying too much about the officiating.
Harry, we've officially run out of time a second time now, so Thank you. I enjoyed that. That was a lekker one. I understand it much better. I feel better now. I know who the enemy is and know what we expect. And I know who they are when they run into the field, which makes a big difference already. So thanks for that. I appreciate it.
It'll be brilliant.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.